Every time, there's got to be something. Good evening. Welcome to another riveting edition of The Ghost and the Goat. I'm your host, Buddy Thayer. I am the paranormal, the ghost side of the show. I'm the paranormal investigator. Our goat, if you will, Bams, is scheduled to maybe join us sometime this evening. He said he's going to try and make it on for sports tonight. We'll see what happens. If he joins us, he joins us. If not, Bams, we look forward to seeing you sometime in the near future because the NFL is really starting to heat up. We just had week 3, and I'm a Dolphins fan. And our quarterback went down yet again. Tua suffered yet another concussion, and our backup, our less than a backup, Skylar Thompson, um, got hit by a bus somewhere on the field and broke his ribs or something. So that's great because he's terrible. And the Dolphins are now looking for a new quarterback. So if you have an arm and you can throw a football and you can run around maybe a little bit and you have somewhat of a brain on your shoulders, R.E. Mike McDaniels, Miami Dolphins, please, Jesus, deliver us a quarterback. I just started to think that there was some little bit of hope in my team after 20 plus years of losing seasons. And here we are again working the losing season. So it'd be great to talk about this with my sports guy, Bams, about his Bams is a Patriots fan. They are also on the losing boat with a very losing team, and which is kind of good to see. It's my Dolphins aren't doing good, but the Patriots, the scourge of the AFC East, are doing terrible. So that's wonderful. And my Boston Red Sox completely folded, and they're like as useful as their playoff hopes are about as useful as like a wet paper bag. They're going to go right through. They're going to end the season. I have the privilege of seeing the last game of the year, which means absolutely nothing in beautiful Fenway Park with some clients. That'd be great. We're right behind the catcher, and it's really cheap because the Red Sox suck so bad this year. Actually, not too bad. We had hopes in July and August, and yeah, wet paper bag. Bam's his Phillies are amazing and one of the best teams in baseball, but maybe we'll talk about that in the next hour. But for this hour, we have a very special guest tonight. Before I get into tonight's guest, just a few quick shout outs. I want to give a big shout out to my mom, Denise, mom, if you will. Happy birthday. If not for you, then there wouldn't be me. So that's wonderful. Thank you for everything, Mom. Happy birthday. Enjoy. I hope you enjoyed the day. I got her Mamma Mia tickets at the PPAC, and we went out for a lovely steak. Let's see. Another big shout out. I want to give to the McIntosh clan. The big loss, Bill McIntosh. He lost his battle to cancer last Friday. I'll be at the funeral tomorrow morning. It's no matter what age it's at, it's always difficult. But he was such a vibrant and loving man, just a great human being, and it sucks to see another one go. So big shout out to the McIntosh family. Bill McIntosh, R.I.P. dude. Uncle Bob, aka Uncle Bobby, will be waiting for you. We'll be looking for you. Big shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Joe Britland. Joe Britland is the co-host on the mid card when it comes on. Joe on this here channel on Van Down by the River podcast. It's a wrestling show that they do with he does with Bams. Joe is also the videographer, if you will, or videographer. It's the video production guy for my other a vodcast that I do called Three Dudes Brews. Myself and 2 other dudes travel around breweries around Rhode Island and New England, tasting great, delicious craft beers, talking to brewers about their amazing beers and about beers that they enjoy and about beers that maybe they don't enjoy. And it's a lovely look into the amazing world of craft beer and all that goes into crafting this wonderful craft beer. So check us out. We're filming episode 5 at Black Pond Brews this Saturday, and that should be available within the first week or 2 in October. Speaking of October and the spooky season, just one last thing before I go. I had the immense privilege of doing I did a lecture called Haunted History. It's just my paranormal group, Ocean State Paranormal. It's some of our historically based cases like Fort Adams or what else do we do? Yeah, there's a bunch of there was 12 of them I presented yesterday at the Skinny Atlas Library in lovely Skinny Atlas, New York. My dear friend and fellow investigator Catherine Donahue and her husband Scotty set that up, and it was a lovely time. They took me out for dinner Sunday night. I had a really good Yankee pot roast, some really good beers from northern New York, and brought home some lovely Saranac pumpkin ale. So that was a good time. Big thanks to you guys. Big thanks to anybody who caught me up in Skinny Atlas. So enough about me. Enough about the things that I do. It's nothing. Tonight's guest did something. Tonight's guest joins us from the Midwest, if you will. He's I guess it's a Midwestern state. Yeah, he's what one would call a Fortean investigator. So he does ghosts, he does UFOs, he does cryptids like Bigfoot or Chupacabra, if you will. He's also an author. He's authored a ton of books, and one was it? It's the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla. I'm interested to talk about this with him. He's what else? He's a fellow podcaster himself. Please welcome to the show, Tim Swartz. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, buddy. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Yeah, excellent. For thank you for joining us. So, Tim, let me ask you. I always ask how you got started, like as a ghost investor or UFO guy. How did you? Which did you pick one first and go with it, or did you just start off with the ground running and do all of them? What's your story?
Well, I actually was kind of drugged kicking and screaming into all of it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people who probably told you that, they got started as a kid. I got started as a kid, but not for the same reasons.
Okay.
Had a class in elementary school that the teacher used to assign us. We used to get a kids newspaper from the Scholastic Book Services.
Oh yeah.
It was an aggregate of all the past week's headlines. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And our teacher would give everybody a story from this newspaper that everybody would have to do a written essay and then present it in front of the class. Mm-hmm. Well, one day I got a story about flying saucers, UFOs.
Oh yeah.
And I really didn't know that much. This is probably about third grade. I was, being an Indiana boy, mm-hmm. I was more interested in like race cars. Yeah.
Oh, right. Bet.
I liked science as well. I was really into the space program. Then it was like the Gemini and the Apollo, mm-hmm. and they were launching rockets off. It seemed like every week, but UFOs, that was new to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wrote what I could, as good as a third grader could do, did my presentation in front of the class, and I thought that would be it. Well, no, that wasn't it. I became then the flying saucer guy, the guy who believes in little green men from Mars. And, you know how kids are. They always try to, get something up on you.
Yeah.
And so, I went on with my life. And, had that albatross kind of around my neck for some reason. People just attached that to me. Mm-hmm. But, as the years went by, what really got my interest was that people would come to me when there was nobody else around and they'd say, I don't believe in this kind of stuff, but
there's always a but.
And then they would proceed to tell me a story. Yeah. There's always a but. Then they'd proceed to tell me a story about how when they were on vacation, their family saw a UFO, or their grandma Agnes has been dead for a week, yet still appearing in front of his bed at night. Mm-hmm. Stories like that. And that's really what got me into it all. The subjects became interesting, but it was these personal accounts from people, and that's what kind of convinced me that there is something going on. I don't know what it is, but year after year, and really, this has probably been going on as long as there's been people on the planet.
Of course.
People have these strange accounts. Mm-hmm. And for most people, they tend to either ignore it, try to forget about it, or fall into it face first. Right. Most people just try to ignore it or forget about it because it's not something that it makes people uncomfortable when they have a weird experience.
Sure
because it's not something that most people have happened to them on a daily basis. God, no. I hope not. That'd be horrible.
A lot of people,
Uh,
a lot of people that I've run into over the years, like they're almost afraid to tell you what happened because they might think that you might think that they're crazy. You might think that there's something wrong with them.
exactly, exactly. That is the main thing that I got from people. Listen to my story. I'm not crazy.
Mhm.
And they can't tell anybody most of the time. People won't tell anybody about. You don't want to tell your friends, don't want to tell your family, God
Mm,
forbid. Then you're the
right.
joke at every Thanksgiving for the next 25 years.
Yep.
you know so they tell me this story, and then I can tell them afterward and say, well, I've heard this before.
Mhm.
You're not crazy. Lots of other people have had very similar experiences,
Right.
and you can see the weight lifted off a lot of these people's shoulders.
Yep.
They may never have to tell anybody else ever again, but it doesn't matter because they now know that they're not alone, that they're
Right.
not crazy.
Just one person to validate that story, make them your feelings are fine. They're completely normal. I went through that myself, or I know X amount of people who have. It's okay. You're not. It's not up here. It's actually out there. It's just yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And so, over the years, that's what really has got my interest and fueled my research and writing, are these personal encounters. I don't go out for the most part seeking the person who gets up on stage and wants to get on television to talk about their experiences. Now, I want to talk to the person who hasn't told anybody or has
Mm,
told just very few people, because those are the ones that are really interesting, and those are the ones that I think have more validity than
mhm.
the ones where people are trying to make a buck of it.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with making a buck, but a lot of times, in that goal to try to get some folding money in your pocket, some people tend to start embellishing their
Oh, of course.
story
I was
or
just gonna say
adding on other things.
exaggerated stories. Absolutely.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
yeah. And as the years go by, the stories become even more fantastic
Mhm.
as, their audience wanes a bit. So, well, maybe I'll throw on, demons from Mars or
Ugh,
whatever, just
awful.
to make it a little bit more exciting. Yeah.
Right. You used
Yeah.
anything with the D word in it, it's automatically, gonna grab so many people wanna, like, see that stuff. They don't wanna, like, know about just the everyday ghosts that, like, haunts. The word "haunt," it gives you such negative connotation. I tell people all the time, it's people. They're just people. I'm like, "What?" They're like, "What about the demons?" I think, honestly, a lot of the time, it could be just a jerk. It could be a guy that was a jerk in life, and he died, and he remained a jerk, and
Still a jerk.
that's what you're getting. People don't.
Yeah.
They say people don't like. You have that sweet, innocent, loving grandmother, and you would imagine her to be like that after she passes. If she was married to an asshole, I would imagine that he would be an asshole after he passes. It's the same concept.
Right.
But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No,
everybody demons sell, so everybody wants to say the D word and throw that around. Let me ask you something.
and I hate that.
Let
Go
me
ahead,
ask you
go.
something, Tim. As an investigator, what's as a like a ghost, because I'm a ghost guy. So, what are some of the ghostly investigations? Some of the best ones that you've been on?
Well, the one that probably has impressed me the most, and I've talked about this on other shows, was this happened when I was working at a television station in Dayton, Ohio,
Hmm.
and around the same time there was what's become a very famous poltergeist case happening in Columbus, Ohio.
Hmm.
Which involved this young girl. In fact, there's a famous photograph of her sitting in a chair, and there's a phone flying across her lap, and she's like, oh, like
Hmm.
that. And so that was in the news, and getting a lot of attention. And my assignment editor got a phone call from some people in a nearby town,
Hmm.
and they said, we saw that story, and the same thing is happening to us. And do you know somebody who wants to look at this? We don't want a news story about it. We don't want any attention, but do you know anybody who may know what's going on. And so he knew I was into that kind of stuff. And I got permission to take one of the, I was a videographer, editor at the time. And so I was able to take my camera and my deck. And, you have to remember back then, it was like the big honking cameras.
Right.
And then you had a separate, because these were 3/4 inch tapes. So you had a separate recorder deck that you had to, hang off your shoulder, and then your camera connected to that. Both the camera and the deck required batteries, all right, and powerful NiCad batteries. So I made sure everything was charged, everything was ready to go. And all I was going to do is I was just going to interview them on camera for my own purposes. Maybe later transfer it to maybe VHS. It was just starting to come out around that time. But anyway, so I went to this place, and almost immediately every battery I had with me were dead.
Wow.
And and like I said, these very powerful batteries, they would run a camera and a deck for a couple of hours. Nope. Every one of them were dead. The ones I had, and then the backup batteries. Nothing was working. And so it was just, it really wasn't a very extreme poltergeist case. They were an elderly couple, and they had just recently brought in their grandchildren, a boy and a girl. The girl was about 11 or 12. The boy was about 9 years old. Okay. Their parents were both in prison. So the grandparents had to take them in. And then shortly thereafter, there started to be poltergeist activity. The typical stuff, wraps on the wall, some, moving things, maybe some furniture moving a bit. Like I said, nothing really extreme.
Right.
So I'm sitting in the living room talking to, the grandparents. From my perspective on the couch, I could look down the hallway. And at the end of the hallway was a room where the two kids were playing a game on the bed. I could see them very clearly. All of a sudden, there was like this loud boom in the house. Like somebody, it almost sounded like somebody had run a car into the wall. It was that loud. And you could actually feel it vibrate. And the grandmother looked at me and she goes, "It's starting." And I'm like, okay. Yeah, so that was that was kind of extreme. So then just a few minutes later, rocks started to fall from the ceiling.
Rocks?
Not rocks. Little, maybe a little white limestone rocks that look like they come from the driveway. And in fact, they had a gravel driveway, and the rocks were exactly the same. But it was like one by one in the middle of the ceiling. It was like they were appearing just below the ceiling, and then they dropped to the floor.
Wow. That's a little weird.
Maybe about 5 or 6.
You saw this with your eyes. You were there.
Saw this with my own eyes. Yeah, and I had a like a film camera with me, just a cheap a Sears camera. I tried to take pictures, but it was everything just came out blurry. Later, I got a picture of my hand holding the rocks. So I gathered up these rocks. Like I said, there's about 5 or 6 of them. On each one of them, and I had read this, a guy by the name of Ivan T. Sanderson had written about a similar thing. So I marked each one of these rocks with an X with a magic marker. I went to the back door, and they had kind of like a small backyard with a cornfield, big, huge cornfield right behind them. And this would have been like around August or so. So the corn was really high. So I took all these rocks and I just chucked them one by one in all kinds of different directions into the cornfield. I hadn't been set down again more than just a couple of minutes when it started all over again. Rocks falling from the ceiling, and it was the rocks that I had chucked into the cornfield.
Wow.
Each one of them had an X on it.
Yeah. That's so weird.
It was very weird. And the other weird thing about it is that after that, the phenomena died down in the house. I talked to them about a couple of weeks later. And they said that after I was there, things calmed down considerably. It was like that all the energy had been used up doing that trick with the rocks.
Oh, I bet.
And about a month later, I checked up on him again. They said nothing has happened. So knock
Wow.
wood. Hopefully, it stopped, and apparently it did. But it was
Just
like
because
you said,
you
weird.
recognized it, or because you acknowledged that it was something, or
I
why
don't
do you
know.
think?
I always say that it used up the energy.
Right.
To do that. I mean, because I imagine that would require a ton of
Oh my
energy.
god. Oh my
You
god. Yeah,
know,
you would think. I mean, in the
and
spiritual world.
and plus, I told the people that the majority of the time, this was something that burns itself out fairly quickly,
Hmm.
and that if you react to it negatively, if you're running around screaming and yelling, and
Yeah, feed
brandishing the
in.
cross, that
Yep.
feeds it. And
Right.
I said,
Exactly.
don't do that. I said,
Right.
don't even acknowledge it, because some people will give it a name,
Yeah.
and even stuff like that will feed whatever it is that's going on,
Of
with the
course.
poltergeist phenomena. And I said, don't give it a name. Don't acknowledge it. If stuff happens, just go about your day
Mm,
and ignore it. Try to ignore it as best as you can.
wow.
And apparently that worked, for them. It may not necessarily work for everyone,
Right.
but other times, that I've advised people the same thing. And based on the work of my good and unfortunately late friend Paul Eno, I tell people,
Wow.
sit around the table and tell jokes.
Right.
You know, that's a great way to exercise a poltergeist, because you're
Hmm.
not feeding it that negative, fearful energy.
So, all right, I have a few questions about this. So, um, one, what distinguishes a poltergeist from, say, something like, how do you know if you see a chair moving down the hallway? How do you know that's a poltergeist rather than a normal ghost? What distinguishes between the two?
If you see, what'd you say, a candle moving down the hallway?
Like a chair, like a chair. Like
A
I had a
chair.
client. I had a client that they said one of the kitchen chairs, they heard it moving, and then they saw it moving down the hallway into the living room in their apartment, and it stopped, and that was it with the chair. But I mean, using that kind of energy is a lot. How do you distinguish between the, hey, that was a poltergeist, or hey, that was like Frank the Ghost?
Mhm. Well, usually with a poltergeist, um, you don't have any kind of apparitions.
Hmm.
It's usually just stuff happening. All right.
Hmm.
Now, for some of the really extreme poltergeist cases that go on for a long time, um, you will get apparitions, but nothing that's really ever the same
Hmm.
at the same time. Plus, you get voice phenomena as well.
Yep.
That's you're really at the extreme end of the poltergeist phenomena when you start getting them talking to you.
Wow.
But with a haunting, usually, and you can have what appears to be poltergeist activity,
Hmm.
things falling over, things moving around, but
Hmm.
you'll also have apparitions usually.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like shadows or mist, running through the house. But usually with it, like your typical haunting, my wife hates that. There's no typical haunting.
Right. No,
Um,
not at all. I don't think so. But
yeah,
anyway,
but yeah, usually you'll see an apparition or apparitions.
so, now you mentioned that the girl who was like 11 to 12 years old. I've heard that is like a almost like a fuel or a precursor for a poltergeist to have a girl in her adolescence or pre-adolescence. Is that something that you subscribe to? Is that something that you would agree with?
Well, sometimes, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a hard and fast rule,
Hmm.
but generally, um, they occur in houses that there's some kind of turmoil going on,
Hmm.
and I think that and a teenager, either a boy or a girl, can really feed into that, but it doesn't, I mean, it's not a deal breaker.
Hmm.
Because I've seen poltergeists happen in houses where it's like a young married couple
Hmm.
who are having, who are having problems.
Right.
But it turned out that the husband had poltergeist activity when he was a teenager, when he was when he was growing up, but he had forgotten all about it, and then it reoccurred again, when he was having trouble with his marriage. Sometimes it just happens, and there doesn't really appear to be any kind of reason. It just happens. So
Right.
that's the, I suppose, the most interesting and the most frustrating things about poltergeist activity is that it can't be pinned down. It actively avoids being pinned down. In fact, that's why it's so difficult to catch photographs or videos of a real poltergeist activity. Now, we've seen the ones, especially on YouTube, where, like you'll see somebody set up a camera and the kitchen then just explodes and all kinds and
Of course.
I mean, I would like to believe, that's, that, oh yeah, that really happened, but I doubt it. From
Right.
just knowing from my own experiences and the experiences of others, how hard it is to get an actual photograph or a video of something actually happen. You may actually, sometimes you may get something as it's already in the air and flying past the camera, but very rarely do you get anything where you see it actually, whatever it is that's being thrown around, launch into the air. There has been some interesting videos that I've seen that I think probably are legitimate, but and a poltergeist, I mean, it even avoids you seeing something directly, which is one of the reasons why, especially kids that are involved in the cases, why they're usually suspected after a while of hoaxing it, because most of the time people don't see the things being launched or toppling over. They see the after effects, or we'll see something already in the air. But there are things that happen in these cases that are tried and true signs that this is an actual case.
Right.
That's that somebody like the police or or somebody like that would have no idea of.
Like somebody leaves the room to do something and comes back and all the chairs are all stacked on the table, or it's just like crazy stuff like that. How does that happen so quickly without any noise, without anything? It's just it's almost magical, but it's not magical. It's just unexplained at this point. So poltergeist, is it now? See, like I said, I'm a ghost guy. I've never really experienced the whole poltergeist thing, but is it? Can you identify? You can't identify them as like one spirit or two spirits. It would be like, is it more? Is it like a person, or is it like a source of energy? What is it like a?
Well, I think it starts out like a source of energy.
Yeah.
And depending on each case is different, but a lot of the ones that I've seen where where it lasts like months, even years, it starts to develop a personality. So and again, that's one of the maddening things about poltergeist is that is this just like a glob of energy that somehow gets activated, either something from the environment or something from the a human that splits off, or a combination of the two. But then how does it develop a personality? Why does it develop a personality?
Right.
And I mean, you've seen, I'm sure you're familiar with, say, like the Bell Witch case, and some of these. Now, the Bell Witch, that's kind of because that one had a personality almost right from the very beginning. But, some of the other more extreme poltergeist cases where this happens, it's a slow build up to it. And it usually involves, like I said, people giving them names, trying to actively talk to them, putting out pads of paper. Here, write on the paper, tell us what you want, things like that. And then pretty soon, you've got what appears to be a central personality, and then offshoot personalities as well.
Yep.
A lot of
Yep.
times with these extreme poltergeist cases, it's not just one, but there could be others, or it could just be the one mimicking, like a bunch of other to make it seem like it's more. It's poltergeist are just they're so interesting just because of all of these wild and different things that go
Right.
on with them. And, it's like I said, it could be nothing more than just raps on the wall or scratches on the furniture, to to them singing bawdy songs in the living room, and then turning around and preaching a sermon from the Bible.
Oh, wow,
Wild
that's
stuff
pretty
like that. And then
intense.
sometimes, well, I mean, there was one case in Canada where at the end, the poltergeist told the children of the household that it actually was an angel sent by God to come down and to get rid of the original poltergeist and save them all. And then it appeared to these kids, and they said it looked like your traditional angel from the from Renaissance paintings and stuff, with the wings and the robe, and that it walked among them and then patted them on the heads and then ascended into heaven on a beam of light, and then it was over. Yeah.
Weird. Weird, man. I don't know, it's tough to wrap my head around stuff like that, because I mean, at what point, like certain points, people must think that's like could be demonic, or it could be like the extreme cases. I can't imagine it gets like misinterpreted as it might be just a poltergeist, or like not just a poltergeist, but I mean, it could be something else. It just sounds like very extreme. I don't.
Well, and that's that's one of the problems, because you have investigators come in, like the Warrens, and
Oh boy.
they will, and the Warrens were, I mean, they never saw a haunting that they didn't think it was demonic,
Right.
and so you get people like that coming in, and then they'll say, oh, well, you may have a demon in the house.
Okay.
And then lo and behold, the poltergeist starts acting that way. If there are crosses on the walls, they'll turn them upside down. They'll steal Bibles. They'll rip up the Bibles or set them on fires. They'll do what they can to make it seem like, that they are demons.
Yep,
And I think that could be because that raises that fear factor, which is, which provides that energy, feeds that energy. The late, and again, I'll reference Paulino, he felt that poltergeists were actually parasites, that we live in a world that has like maybe alternate realities that exist alongside of our own, and very close to ours is are these, whatever you want to call them, spiritual beings, elementals, things that never had a like a human type of life,
right,
but they feed off of our energies. And for whatever reason, they'll they'll show up at a household and cause problems to feed off that energy. He in fact said that in one case in New Hampshire, I think is where it was, he was he stayed there for a while, and he was playing checkers with, and again, this was a teenage girl who was in this household that may have been the focal point of this. And he saw coming down the hallway towards them what appeared to be three kind of whitey shadowy figures. And so he stepped in between the little girl and these figures and kind of like pushed And
Mhm.
he said that he actually felt a resistance. And he said that he said it kind of reminded him of like maybe like a bird or bird bones type of situation, that he was very lightweight and thin. But he said that this was an actual physical contact
Hmm.
that he had, but then they just walked right through him
Mhm.
and attacked the little girl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy.
So yeah, I mean, people love to try to pigeonhole and to put into, you know this is a poltergeist, this is a haunting, this is, and it could
Right.
be that a poltergeist could be a number of different things that kind of do the same stuff, so to speak. So I don't know. I mean, it could be that a lot of these interpretations that we've heard, people say, may all be correct to a certain extent.
Right. Right. As an investigator, I've been on cases and I've heard the knocks that I couldn't tell you where they come from. I've heard the footsteps. I've heard the phantom footsteps. I've seen a chair move right in front of my face. A metal chair got kicked right in front of my face. Although after listening to the audio, you hear the footsteps like preceding, and then it's like somebody walked into this chair. It's fascinating to go back and listen to it, but I mean, in the moment, I was scared out of my mind because like, what the hell just happened?
Right.
Any time in your time investigating, Tim, have you ever been scared, wanted to run out, wanted to leave, maybe even feared your own well being?
You know, um, I don't think I don't think that I have ever been okay. Let me put it another way. I've been in cases where nothing has ever happened, and I'm sitting around by myself, maybe in a location, and
Yep.
it's dark, and I may get like that kind of like that shudder down your spine type of situation, or the
Mm-hmm.
feeling that I'm being watched.
Mm-hmm.
I've got that before, and that's
Numerous
that's
times.
that's that's creepy. But then nothing else ever happens,
Right.
and really that has been the extent of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did a case one time. This was an old movie theater that was going to be renovated,
Mm-hmm.
and people kept saying that it was haunted. Nobody ever saw a ghost, but it was the things moving around. The workmen, their tools would be stolen, and then they'd find them later up on the roof or some other location. So I brought with me this young woman who was really interested in this kind of stuff. She was thinking that maybe she wanted to do this as well. And this was her first case. So
Mm-hmm.
the two of us and the manager of this theater we were walking down and then decided to sit. And I was talking to him. We were sitting in the seats, and these were the type of seats where you would they would fold up on their own,
Yep.
uh, unless there was somebody actually sitting in them, and then you'd get up and they'd fold back into place.
Yep.
So he is on my left, and then the young woman with me was on the right,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking with him, and all of a sudden she burst into tears and ran out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Uh-oh, what happened?" Afterwards, she told me that while we were sitting there, the chair next to her on the right suddenly folded down like somebody had sat down next to her, except there was nobody there.
Wow.
and that was it for her.
Yeah.
She lost all interest in
Really.
yeah, she was not prepared for the reality of this kind of stuff.
Having
And
that
I mean,
that pinnacle moment as an investigator, seeing something like that, right? And then that's it. I'm done. No, that's where you
yep.
keep going. That's where you like, holy shit, you had one of those holy shit moments, and good for you.
Oh
But I mean,
yeah,
yeah, nah,
yeah.
it's not for
Well,
everybody.
that's like that's like these ghost hunting, reality shows
Hmm.
where the people are, anytime something happens, they're like screaming and running, and it's like, oh, I realize it's television and they're
Yeah,
doing
of
it
course.
for the show, but why are you doing this if every time a pin drops or there's a knock on the wall, you shriek like an idiot?
Right.
You
Dude,
know,
run.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. You know,
Uh,
like I said, with the exception of some of the times when I felt like that I was being watched and felt creepy, I've
it,
never been in a situation where I wanted to go, dude, run.
right. No, it is uneasy. I have wished to get out of the area I'm in, and sometimes I'll leave and say, thank you. Don't talk to me. Leave me alone. I'm not here for you, or whatever. If I'm not, on an investigation, you get that sudden, like, oh my, that uneasy, somebody's like right on top of you kind of feeling. The room suddenly gets really small. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I've been like,
That's a
yeah,
that's a
I'm gonna
good
leave
way to
now.
describe it.
Yeah,
That is a very good way to describe it. The room suddenly gets a lot smaller than it was.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I've been there a lot. Yeah, whether I'm investigating or not. Sometimes I'm at work, and it'll suddenly get like really like. Or I remember one time I work at a group home. It's a mental group home for mentally ill adults, and it wasn't always a group home. And there's been people who have died there. So I was down. I was going through the basement. It's a very clean basement. We keep food down there. We have a lot of storage, so it's not like an inch of dust. It's beautiful. And I was walking to the food cabinetry, and like it's like I walked through my whole face like went through a spider web. It's like, oh, and I look
Mm.
around and there's nothing. There is not to this day. This is like a year and a half ago. To this day, I have still not found a spider web in that basement or a spider in that house. And I know for sure that was probably more of something spiritual than something biological. But it's like, yep, I'm not here for you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. I'm just here. I'm going to go take care of those people upstairs. Leave me alone. My courage goes out the window that I have when I'm an investigator because I'm just not. I don't want to deal with that when I'm at work. It's just. But it does. It happens. It happens like frequently, not
Mhm.
all that frequently, but I mean, enough where it's like very noticeable when it happens, and you know that. Like if I had my recorder on, that's the point where I'll just hit the recording button. I'm like, all right, let's go, let's do this right here, right in this room.
Right,
So that yeah,
right.
it's definitely cool. Speaking of cool, so let's go on from ghosts. I want to talk about one of your books, and you did a documentary on Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla, yes.
What can you Tesla? I've heard some things that he might have been into the paranormal in his lifetime. Might have actually had his own experiences. What can you tell us about Tesla?
Well, Tesla, you know, we wouldn't be having this discussion with this technology if it
Mhm.
wasn't for Nikola Tesla.
Okay.
Because he was the inventor of the AC motor,
Oh, right.
and our whole our technology, our electrical system is based off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is his major claim to fame,
Yep.
is that Tesla was the inventor of our modern electrical system.
Mm.
Um, Now, you asked about Tesla and the paranormal. Tesla was actually, even though he had spiritual and esoteric experiences, I'm going to take a drink here.
Take it. Yeah.
Um, he was pretty much um, a disbeliever
Mm-hmm.
most of his life in the paranormal type of
Mm-hmm.
situation. In the paranormal, he felt that there was always a scientific explanation for things. Now,
Of
later in
course.
his life, as he got older, he developed an interest in Eastern philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
and thought that there could be connections with some of these teachings and how the universe actually manifests itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Uh, because I mean, he had worked for a number of years on trying to develop his own unified field theory, much
Mm-hmm.
like Einstein, and
Mm-hmm.
but he had vastly different ideas on how the universe worked. But like I said, as he got older, he began to wonder whether or not there, rather than this strictly materialistic viewpoint of reality, that there could be more to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Sure. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, well, and he had an interesting experience, which is featured in our latest book called Weird Time: Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space,
Nice.
where he had at his laboratory in Manhattan, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't offhand I can't remember exactly when this took place. You know, I mean, it was the late 1800s, 1890, something like that. Um, he was he had a large Tesla coil in his laboratory. He was the inventor of the Tesla coil, naturally, and he was working on resonating fields, I think is what it was, and rotating electromagnetic fields. I couldn't even tell you how he was doing this, but in this process, he got struck by an arc of electricity that came off the Tesla coil. He happened just to be at the wrong place at the wrong time,
Oh boy.
and it held him in place until his assistant was able to. I think his assistant actually had a wooden board and knocked him out of it.
Oh wow.
But he said afterwards, he told a reporter for a New York newspaper that in that brief moment of time, he said it felt like that he was outside of normal time, as we
Mm.
perceive time. And he said that he could see time as one thing, and it's hard to describe. It's difficult for our three-dimensional minds to think about this concept. But he
Mm.
said it looked like to him that the past, present, and the future all existed at the same time, and he could see it all
Wow.
at once. you know and I've told people, to try to, maybe make it a little bit easier to understand, is like, the past is down the street, the present is here at your house, and then the future is down the down the further down the street. And if you took a drone and flew above that, you could see it all at once. And that's kind
Mm.
of, I think, the way that Tesla felt that he could see it.
Wow.
And he developed then an interest in how the universe works, and how time and space works, and worked on that um, for the rest of his life. His ideas were along the lines that um, everything is fields of energy. He was
Mhm.
pretty much way ahead of his time,
Yeah.
with these kinds of concepts. But of course, he was hampered naturally by what science knew at the time, what
Mm.
technology was available at the time for him to do experiments with. And I mean, he tried to work on these things mathematically. He was a genius at math as well. But a lot of his work ended up disappearing for whatever reasons. The government, after he's died, the United States government confiscated a ton of it,
Wow.
anything that they could get their hands on, because he had developed in the early 1900s a what essentially was a particle beam weapon.
Oh wow.
And yeah, he called it. It was his weapon of peace,
Hmm.
and it was his idea that if every country had this particle beam weapon, that nobody would dare attack anybody else.
Mm.
Because you could knock them out of knock missiles or planes out of the sky with
Yeah.
this particle beam weapon.
Wow.
And so when he did finally pass away, anybody that could tried to grab as much material of Tesla's that they could find.
Oh wow. I bet.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
that's fascinating. So you did seeing time and space like that, and be able to see it all. Do you think like time travel is that like any relation to time travel? Do you think it's a possibility? Do you think it's actually a thing, or no? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
well, it's I think that the best way to look at it is that our current understanding of time and how time works is wholly lacking.
Yep.
We don't really have a very a good grasp on what it is. I mean,
Hmm.
the nice thing though is that we have a lot of physicists who are actively working on trying to find out what it is, and
Hmm.
that's just really a recent development. It wasn't in my lifetime. Uh, uh, a scientist wouldn't dare say that he was doing research on time, because
Hmm.
that was felt to be more of a philosophical matter
Right.
rather than a scientific one. Einstein probably was the first to actually take that step when he said that time and space were the same thing. In fact,
Hmm.
called it space time. And from that point on, and especially starting in the 60s, it's just gone, just leaps and bounds and trying to get a better understanding of it.
Hmm.
But I think that time travel could be possible if it is something that works as we think it works.
Hmm.
That
Yep.
it's the fourth dimension, that we live in a four-dimensional world, three, with time being the fourth dimension. And of
Hmm.
course string theory says that there are other dimensions besides that. But we there's a phenomena that we write about quite a bit in the book called time slips,
Hmm.
where people will have these experiences where it seems like that they're experiencing, albeit briefly, a past or even a future event.
Hmm.
They'll see things, they'll smell things, they can like feel the say like the brick wall
Yep.
next to them, and then suddenly find themselves back in their normal time.
Hmm.
So this could be, I always say this could be a natural event. This is Mother Nature showing us that time maybe isn't as difficult, or as as oh gosh, yeah, this is a subject I always struggle with words with, because there aren't really any good words to describe a lot of this. But
Right.
that time isn't the impenetrable wall that we think it is, that there are things that can happen that can open up the past or even the future to
R-
us. All
right.
right, now, saying that, it could also be that there are parallel realities that
Hmm.
are right next to our own,
Hmm.
that maybe their timelines are a little bit slower than ours or a little bit faster, and
Hmm.
that under the right conditions you can briefly experience these alternate realities. And it looks like that maybe you're looking at the night, say like the 1930s or
Yeah.
something like that, but you actually haven't time travel, you're just seeing an alternate reality.
Hmm.
I don't know, that's the big question that we pose in this book, all kinds of questions, actually,
Yep.
but we base a lot of this book on people who have these personal experiences. Like I said at the beginning of the show, it's these personal experiences that people have,
Yep.
you know, that they say, it looked like to me that the street suddenly turned into what appears to be like maybe the 19th century. There's no
Hmm.
cars, there's horse-drawn carriages.
Awesome.
People were dressed in old-fashioned clothes.
Yeah.
I could smell the air, I could hear everything, but then I found myself back, back in my normal time.
Back in reality.
What?
Go back
Yeah.
in.
What happened? Yeah. What happened to them?
That's that's incredible. I'm a my one of my biggest passions in life is history, American history, Rhode Island history for that matter. I'm being from Rhode Island, but I wouldn't want to necessarily like go back and experience any of this stuff. Just be able to peek my head into the past and like have a firsthand glimpse at like battles from the Civil War, or like like the Gettysburg Address, or like any of these like pivotal moments in American history or Rhode Island history or world history that I'd just like to peek in on, or like how the pyramids were built. You mentioned investigating you investigated at the pyramids, right? The Great
Mhm.
Pyramids in Egypt. You did like spiritual paranormal investigation, or you did UFO? What did you do? What did you?
Well, I was actually there um, for work
Mhm,
for a series of shows that I was actually I was the videographer
mhm,
for that. But I knew in advance that I was going to be going to these various locations, and so I contacted people that I knew in these areas,
mhm.
Egypt, China, like that. And I said, hey, I'm going to be here at such and such a time. Let's do something. Let's
Oh
do
yeah.
some investigations. And so, the person who actually that I knew in Egypt was part of the government,
Oh
and
wow.
actually we went to Giza really early in the morning,
Mhm.
and he was able to get me into places that most tourists weren't able to get
Oh, that's
into. Yeah.
great.
So we I took pictures. I mean, I
Mhm.
talked to people who have had like weird experiences, UFOs, other stuff, at the pyramids, or around that general area, things like that.
Mhm. So we didn't. You're a UFO guy. We didn't really touch on UFOs. I gotta ask you. Do you think the aliens built the pyramids, or is it more natural?
No, 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 no. I think people did it.
Yeah.
You know, it could be that they got help from, say, an advanced civilization
Yep.
that had suffered a catastrophe,
Mhm.
and that there are only a few of them left scattered across the globe, and
Mhm.
that these people were then trying to pass off the knowledge that they had to the now primitive inhabitants of the planet. Yeah,
Sure.
some people say, oh well, you're talking about Atlantis. Yeah, that's just kind of
Hmm.
a catch-all
Maybe.
catch-all name.
Right.
But I don't think that we are the only technological based civilization that has arisen on this planet. I think that
Oh
there
yeah.
has
No.
been yeah, I think that there's been others. I mean, the earth has been here for what, 6 million years, six
Yeah.
billion years.
Right.
That's a long time.
Mhm.
So I don't
Yeah.
think we're the only ones.
I mean, the Egyptians were a major empire, and they dominated a lot of. They invaded and took over a lot of other countries. They enslaved the Hebrew people, the Israelites at the time. They probably countless other tribes of peoples, and it just made them do the work. I mean, without
Mhm.
any consideration for their own lives, because they were the conquered people. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's been like they built giant buildings. I mean they built the Greeks built the temples and all that. It's just some like they probably could have done stuff. It's kind of far off to think that the aliens came here and built the pyramids out here and built the pyramids in Mexico City, and that we're the offspring somehow of these aliens. I do not know how much of that I can actually swallow and say I believe, because it's just, I don't know. It's very far off. I don't know.
No,
Um,
no, I agree with that. I mean, I think people are smart.
mhm,
People have been smart, for thousands of years.
right,
We just think we're smarter because we have technology. But
right,
no, I
of
mean,
course.
thousands of years ago, people were just as smart as we are now. They just don't have iPads and things
Right,
like that.
they absolutely found a way to survive. They were innovators. They dealt with weather. They crossed the seas. They did it without the technologies that we have, which I think makes them a little bit more tougher in those days. But might just be me. The 114 group that we didn't cover yet is the cryptids, the Bigfoots, the chupacabras, the Mothman, they're a different name all over the country for all these different beasts and creatures that no one has any actual proof or evidence that they exist. What are your thoughts on being a cryptic and being a 14 investigator? What are your thoughts on cryptids? Are they a thing? Are they a current thing? Are they? Some people say they're related to ghosts. Some people say they're related to aliens. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I'll say that I do believe that a lot of people are reporting correctly that they have had experiences
Mm-hmm.
with mysterious creatures.
Okay.
Whether it be thunderbirds or Bigfoot or lake
Mm-hmm.
monsters.
Right.
Um, and again, this has been a situation that has occurred for hundreds, if probably thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So there definitely is something real going on. I mean, not only are people reporting these things kind of in an information vacuum, because you get
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these cases where people have no idea, have never heard. I mean, it's a little more difficult today, never heard of Sasquatch
Mm-hmm.
or lake monsters or things like that, yet will turn in a report that's it's like the same reports that you have that have read about for like the last 50 100 years, and all across the planet too. Not only like a local information vacuum, but you have people on the other side of the planet seeing the same kind of things.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so it
Right.
makes
Right.
it makes me think that there's definitely something going on. What that something is, that's what we're trying to find out. Are we actually dealing with real physical creatures?
Mm-hmm.
Are there a cousin species,
Mm-hmm.
talking about Bigfoot,
Bigfoot.
of
Yep.
humans that are living out in the woods and the mountains, that are probably maybe as smart as us, just not technologically based,
Mm-hmm.
and are smart enough that they know how to keep themselves hidden,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or are they inhabitants from another reality that
Mm-hmm.
occasionally, make an appearance here, join the physical world for a while, stomp around, leave footprints,
Mm-hmm.
poop in the woods, leave it behind, but then go back to where they came from, leaving those little bits of evidence behind. All
Okay.
right.
Well. Yeah.
Or maybe a little from column B, a little from column A, a little from
Mm-hmm.
column B.
Mm-hmm.
One of the interesting things I think about paranormal phenomena is that it will tend to mimic real stuff. So it could be that there are actually Bigfoot types of creatures, but then there is a paranormal aspect
Mm-hmm.
that, for whatever reason, gets activated, and you'll get these reports of Bigfoot with like the glowing red eyes,
Yeah. Right. Right.
or or the ones that will appear in front of people in a flash of light and then disappear in the same flash of light. Something you wouldn't expect a physical hominid to do,
Right.
but you have reports like that.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
uh, and you have like the big bird sightings as well. I
Mm-hmm.
live in Indiana, and in the 1970s, in Illinois and Indiana and Wisconsin, there was this spate of thunderbird sightings, as they were called, these
Mm-hmm.
giant birds with huge wingspans. There was even a case where in Illinois, where these people were having like an outdoor barbecue with neighbors. There were quite a few people, and the kids were all like running around out in the backyard playing, and they saw these two giant birds suddenly fly overhead.
Mm-hmm.
One of these birds came down and actually grabbed a little boy by his shoulders,
Jesus.
lifted him off the ground a ways. And the mom said that she could see this bird bending its head down and pecking at her son's face
Oh.
as it was starting to carry him away. He was like a couple of feet off the ground, but he finally was able to squirm loose from this thing. And so you had like a couple of dozen people witness this account. And
Right.
you look it up in Google. I think it happened in Lawndale, Illinois. If people want to look it up, you'll see this account. It's very famous. But okay, where are these birds hiding?
Right.
These are huge birds. I mean, it's very difficult, for a huge bird to keep itself hidden. So, where did it come from? Where did they go?
Yeah, that's same thing like with Bigfoot. That's such a it's such a big animal. As advanced as we are with I don't know, like even hunting or like uh, I don't know, like satellites. I don't. You would think that you
Drones.
drones. Yeah, you'd think there'd be something beyond a footprint or a thing here, or that my favorite but least favorite is that where people will say that there's like a whole bunch of branches put together, and that's something that Bigfoot leaves. How is that? How is it? That could be some guy. Probably. I mean, I don't know. What you know what I'm saying, Tim? I just don't.
Mhm.
It's just not. It's just not enough for me to be like, okay. I mean, I've seen Unsolved Mysteries plenty of times. I've seen it on there. I've heard the stories from around the world, Pacific Northwest. There's stories from Asia that like you say, this creature takes on various forms around the world. So like maybe, but it's just not enough to push me over that edge. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. No, and I don't blame you.
Mhm.
You know, I'm kind of the same way. Um, I suspect that if these things are physical, that eventually one of them's going to get hit by a truck. You know, it's
Yep.
going to happen. It's going to happen.
You would
But
think, right?
with these technologies that you've mentioned, I mean, people have been catching these things on like trail cameras,
Hmm.
on with drone cameras. Uh, there was there was one case a couple of years ago where they had one of these eagle nest cameras,
Hmm.
and it just so happened that the part of the camera you could see slightly past the nest, on the ground below. And
Hmm.
one day they happened to catch this very large figure, much larger than a human, dark, no details, but a biped walking past the trees.
Mm.
And they did like a comparison. They had like a regular person, in the same location, and whatever this thing was, it was much bigger,
Mm.
and not a bear, because like I
Right.
said, it was walking on two legs the entire time it was seen on the camera.
Wow.
So, once again, like I said, I think that there's some basis of reality,
Hmm.
to these things, but what that basis is, I don't know.
Right.
That's the big question. That's what makes it interesting, isn't
For sure.
it?
Oh, for sure. There's and there's been like you said about personal experiences. There's been countless personal experiences I've heard people tell. I've read about in books. I read about some there was like a mass sighting in Maine a number of years ago. And it's I but there's nothing that I can look at that I can see for my that I mean, I have the very same experience with ghosts. I tell people all the time, "Oh, you haven't had an experience yet," and that's why you're not a believer. But I guess that's what I just got to see go out in the woods and see Bigfoot when I'm fishing or something. And I'll just be more of a. I'll probably shit my pants, but be more of a believer. Um, and I probably won't be able to conjure up my phone in time to take a picture, but I'll be that guy that always has the Bigfoot story and never has anything good to go along with it. But yeah, I just it's I mean, I have trouble believing it, but then again, I believe in ghosts and stuff like that. So that's what some people think I'm crazy too. So I guess it's the whole paranormal field in itself. Any good things that you got coming up, Tim? Any new books coming out? Any where we can check out to find your books? Or any websites that you have that we can subscribe to? Anything going on? What do you got?
Sure. Well, right now, we're talking mostly about our most recent book, which is called Weird Time: Exploring
Mhm.
the Mysteries of Time and Space, and this was co-written by Sean Casteel, and then we had a bunch of contributing writers.
Mhm.
All of us used to work for the late Timothy Green Beckley, and so I've put out a couple of books now with all of us contributing various chapters, to these books. One of them before Weird Time is called Mimics: The Others Among Us, and
Okay.
we've got people like Scott Corrales and Nigel Watson, Diane Tessman, Paul Dale Roberts, just a bunch of just excellent writers contributing. So with Weird Time, right now you can find it on Amazon.com. Probably the best way is just to type in my name, Tim R. Swartz, and that, and all my other books will come tumbling out for your reading pleasure. The website for Weird Time, if you want to find out more about it, is called weirdtimebook.com.
Sounds good. All right, Tim. I want to thank you for coming on. I haven't heard back from BAMS tonight, so I do not think we're going to do the sports side of the show this evening. But I'd like to thank you for coming on. It's always good to hear from like another investigator, from how people do things, their experiences. It's always fun to hear other people's stuff and what other people do. It's just cool.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Tune in next week, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, at live on Tuesday. We have Darren I'm probably messing up his name, but Darren will join us live at 8 p.m. and it should be a good show. I'm gonna wrap things up here. For Tim Swartz, I'm Buddy Thayer. This has been the Ghost and the Goat. Hopefully, the Goat will be back soon, and we'll have more on sports. All I can say is go Dolphins. I'm gonna hold my breath. I don't know who they're gonna grab for a quarterback, but it's so dicey. I can't stand when people get hurt. So everybody, you have a good week, and that's it. That's it.